Hello there and welcome to an advanced PvP guide to conditions. In this episode I'll be explaining how conditions really work by breaking down some of the maths behind the scenes and bringing you some great graphs to show you how to maximise condition damage. If you missed it or would like to cover the basics before watching this episode, I've linked a basic guide to conditions below. So first we'll take a look at condition damage. Condition damage only affects 4 of the 11 conditions: bleeding, burning, poison and confusion. The chart currently on screen shows you how much damage per second each condition will apply with the relevant condition damage. The basic 2 conditions here are burning and bleeding, both damage over time conditions. Now at first glance this may seem like bleeding is a lot less effective than burning, but remember that bleeding stacks in intensity and burning in duration, so the maximum damage per second with 1000 condition damage with burning is 578. But with a fairly easy to achieve 15 stacks of bleeding on the target, the bleed will deal in the region of 1387 damage per second. So now you can see the difference. Bleeding deals massive damage if you can spew the condition out enough to get a large stack, whereas burning deals steady, reasonable damage. The other 2 conditions on the chart are poison and confusion. The damage on poison isn't really relevant, as what makes poison effective is its 33% reduction to healing, and confusion is currently too weak in structured PvP to really be worth worrying about. It's very difficult to get large stacks of confusion out due to the limited number of skills with it on, and secondly it's only effective on skill activations, not on hits. It has minimal effect on any build other than those that just spam their one key while using quickness. Condition duration applies to all conditions, but bear in mind that damage over time conditions only trigger on a full second. This means that bleeding, which stacks in intensity, will only hit 3 times on a 3.5 second bleed. There's a slight difference when it comes to burning and poison, as these stack in duration. So a 2.5 second burn plus a 3.5 second burn will burn for a full 6 seconds, triggering 6 times as it adds those 2.5s together. However, this is only effective if you have many accesses to this condition to allow it to stack up. On screen now is an image of a chart showing how condition duration affects the base durations of conditions. So as you can see, anything from a 1 to a 3 second duration is quite difficult to increase enough to get another full second out of it. However, after 5 seconds it gets a lot more effective. So you can see if you just add 20%, or for example 20 points in the condition duration trait line, you'll gain another full second. This is very obtainable. Cross-reference your base condition durations with this chart to see what you should aim for. Condition duration in practice is a risky build direction to take. While if you're fighting someone with minimal to no condition removal, it will be very powerful as it allows for huge stacks and high damage. However, as soon as that player removes the condition, it makes no difference how long it should have been on them for. What matters then is how much damage it got off before it was removed, and this is all about condition damage. If you do intend to increase your condition duration, traits, runes and sigils are the way to do it. But keep in mind there are some bugs in this area, so check the wiki for bug alerts on anything you choose. Tooltips often do not correctly represent durations either, so be prepared to get your calculator out. Lastly, don't forget that condition duration will only affect any other conditions in your arsenal, such as weakness or vulnerability. Now we've covered the 2 attributes that affect conditions, I want to explain what actually happens under extreme condition uses. For example, with a condition based entire team. Intensity stacking conditions such as bleeding or vulnerability will cap out at 25 stacks. Any more applications will be ignored until an existing application ends. This means that having it possible to stack more than 25 stacks of a condition at once on one target is wasted DPS. The damage of each bleed is calculated independently depending on the player who cast its condition damage and expires when expected. When it comes to conditions that stack in duration, they're calculated independently, except when it creates an extra pulse of damage by combining 2 durations, such as a 1.5 seconds and a 2.5 seconds coming together. The first pulse is player 1's damage. The second pulse is only created when it's pushed over the top by player 2's attack. This then uses player 2's damage. The remaining 2 pulses are of course player 2's damage as well. Now I wanted to talk briefly about the pros and cons of condition damage compared to regular direct damage. So firstly, conditions can deal some massive damage. For example, my current condition based warrior deals 117 damage per bleed on the target, often having between 20 and 25 stacks during its burst. This will deal in the region of 2,340 damage to 2,925 damage per second, plus the direct damage of it being applied. This damage, unlike direct damage, disregards the toughness and defense of the target, meaning it will deal the same damage on a glass cannon elementalist as it will on a high defense guardian. The damage will continue for any immunity buffs as well, such as Endure Pain, which, while this stops the incoming of any new conditions or any direct damage, it does not remove conditions already applied, and they will continue to tick through the effect. It can be applied to a target in the down state to finish them off while fighting another opponent, allowing for easier 2v1 victories, or if your build allows for it, you can apply a large stack to your target and then kite them as they slowly die. However, all this damage is subject to conditions remaining on the target. Condition removal will of course completely nullify any damage that might have happened, making any condition based build subject to the target's own ability to remove it. This means that any condition based build must be able to spew conditions on a regular basis and not rely on the abilities with a long cooldown. It must also have access to other conditions other than its main damage one to counter abilities that will remove just one or two conditions. For example, if your main DPS comes from bleeding, also have cripples, weakness, maybe vulnerability, anything with a long duration which you can keep on the enemy and give them a number of conditions at any one time. So to conclude this episode, I would like to say that condition builds are very viable and can be very powerful. However, they will shine more in those pug matches where condition removal is less prevalent than in the tournament games where teams run with it in mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode and don't forget to subscribe and leave us some feedback.